Hello, my name's Paul Main, and I'm going to be delivering a few sessions on cognition and learning. In these sessions, we're going to be looking at how cognition affects learning outcomes and what we can do about that in a classroom setting. In terms of the format, I've got some PowerPoints that I want to show you and look at some research along the way. I'm not going to go down a rabbit hole with the research. I just want to touch upon it because I think there's some really important things in there that's going to really help you develop your practice as a teacher. Everything we're going to do is looking at the universal principles, so you can use them across subjects, across topics, across age groups. There's something generic about them, and they're really useful to have in your back pocket when you're designing lessons and thinking about the curriculum. In terms of how we're going to do this, I'm going to provide a quick presentation now, and then we're going to look at different areas of cognition. And then the real part of this, which I hope is going to be useful, is looking at the applications of this. What does it mean for classroom practice? Along the way, I'm going to pause my video, and then I'm going to share with you different screenshots and different videos. But everything I'm referring to will be in a folder on your shared space, your NQT space. So within there, you'll find the videos, the tools, and any other accompanying research that will be useful for you. So let's just have a quick look at what this is all about and why I'm sort of pitching for cognition today. Why I think cognition is so important for learning outcomes. We often hear a lot about behaviour, but I think cognition is the real engine room of where learning happens. So a quick bit about me before I go any further. My background's in educational research and working with various organisations such as the ones on there you might recognise, NFER, which they do a lot of research in the classroom. Future Lab was part of that, looking at innovative practice in the classroom. And then Creative Partnerships, looking at creativity. The one I'm involved with now, structural learning, and you can find everything we're referring to today on that website. But let's have a quick look at the outline of what we're going to be doing and what we're going to be looking at. So I'm going to argue today that visuals are imperative for learning outcomes, and there's lots of different reasons for this, but the principles are quite simple. And I think that having a visual at the centre of your classroom practice, or using visuals and manipulatives, are a real strong pedagogical tool that you can use all the time, not just in maths when you're using, I don't know, Numicon or whatever tools you're using visuals and physical materials outside of maths as well. And then we're going to look at some applications as well, and look at when you can use visuals. And some of those applications are going to be digital ones. So these are things that you can use for yourself, but they're also things you can use in the classroom or for home learning. Everything we look at in these sessions, just think of it in terms of two cohorts of children. Now, I don't mean this literally when you look at this. I'm not saying children can't think or they won't think. I'm saying think about the children that might struggle regularly. So they might have underlying working memory problems. They might have dyslexia. They might have something that's not been diagnosed, but the children who struggle to process new information consistently. Think about all of what we're looking at today in view of that person. And then sort of at the other end of the spectrum, those children who will do everything they can not to think about the content. So they just want to know how to get to the right answer quickly. And think about both of those groups of people. And I think what we're going to do today is look at how all of this practice can help that thinking process for both cohorts of people. There's something universal about this. Okay, so here's my sort of statement, and we're going to do a quick experiment now. So I'm going to argue that visuals are essential for learning, and I've got a paragraph for you to read. Now, this is bad practice from my front, but I'm going to read it out. Apparently, when you're doing PowerPoint presentations, you should not be reading it out, but it works best if I do this in a kind of a webinar situation. So I've got a paragraph for you, and I'm going to ask you some questions about this paragraph. So Helen is the head coach of girls football development at Taunton FC. Gemma runs the under-9s team. Sam, Josh, and Susie are Gemma's assistant coaches. Tina runs the under 12s team. Faith, Sue and Mike are Tina's assistant coaches. Susie, Faith, Sue and Tina are volunteering together on the new under 7s community project. So this is an arbitrary paragraph, and what I'm trying to do is demonstrate how your working memory and all of our working memories can become overloaded very quickly. So I've asked you to decode that text, and then I've asked you to extrapolate the meaning from that text. So your mind now is trying to hold on to all of that stuff, and this is a fairly simple paragraph, but there's quite a lot of objects in there that your mind is grappling with. Now here's three questions for you. This is just a quick sort of a comprehension test, low stakes quizzing. I love it. So who is the highest ranking person in the under 7s project? Now hopefully you can remember what you read. He says, smiling. Which team has the most staff in the under 7s project? And which people are not involved with the under 7s project? So 3 fairly simple questions. Now what's happening, I'm guessing, is that you're struggling to remember what you read from this paragraph. So even if I was to do this, switch between the two, what I'm causing your working memory to do is switch attention between the two things, and that's overloading you. So you think about if you're working in early years or key stage 1, what sort of working memory capacity you're going to be presented with. It's going to be a lot less than what this paragraph is asking you to entertain. Yeah, it's something a lot more simple. So what we're trying to say here is that instead of presenting the text like that, we'd be a lot better positioned if we just presented it in terms of a simple diagram. And this diagram, it's got everything. It's got all of the key pieces of information, but it also shows you, the reader, shows you the organizational structure, which was what those questions were alluding to. I was asking you to extrapolate the meaning and think about the organization of all those bits. So here they are presented in a hierarchical diagram. And what we're going to look at now is how you can use diagrams and graphic organizers specifically in the classroom as a pedagogical tool. This is quite an old quote, but the whole idea, what we're looking at today is about teaching people to become better learners. So we're thinking about learning as something that is learnable, that you can teach people to become better learners with a series of different tools. What we're looking at the moment is how visuals are, they're not just nice to look at, they're mental navigational tools. And without that mental navigation, sometimes learners can get lost. And they're incredibly useful for figuring out where you are and what you're doing with the content. They're basically a tool to be able to process new information, incoming information. Just a quick look at some of the research behind this, and then we're going to do a quick task. One of the people that's worth looking at on YouTube, and his books are still available, is Joseph Novak. He was one of the first people to really look at concept diagrams, graphic organizers, and looked at them as a tool to help people learn. But you'll find his videos on YouTube, and we'll certainly be looking at one later on. A newer book, Barbara Tversky's Mind in Motion. She's combined a lot of research looking at the very nature of cognition, and she argues that it's a spatial activity, that children are processing information in terms of time and space. So they're thinking about how incoming information is attached to old information that they might have in their long-term memories, and how things are connected. I haven't got time to go into the sort of the nuts and bolts of the book, but it's a fascinating read, and we'll certainly be looking at some of her work. But the kind of the thing that I really wanted to get across today was about this idea of knowledge architecture, that everything that you're going to be presenting children with in the curriculum could be fitted within an organizational structure which has an accompanying visual. So it might be that you're looking at something in history and there's going to be a timeline that you can attach to it. You know, you've got this visual that's at the center of that topic, or it might be that you're looking at a cause and effect process. What is the effect of coastal erosion or global warming, and there's a sort of a clearly defined cause and effect pattern that you can look. And having that at the centre of classroom practice makes learning manageable, and also gives you, the teacher, a reference point to keep coming back to, as I've said previously, with as a navigational tool as well. In this book, I thoroughly recommend having a look at, and you'll find one of Oliver's videos in the repository. Oliver Caviglioli wrote this wonderful book on dual coding, and in this book he's talking about how visuals are a central tool for how children understand new ideas. So presenting children with the visual and the spoken word or the written text and combining it gives children a distinct advantage, a computational advantage with processing incoming information. Anyway, this is the thing I wanted to share with you. It's a great piece of work that Oliver Caviglioli did, and it's basically called Organising the Organisers. And what he's done here is, and other authors have been looking at this, but I think this is a really simple model that you can have in your classrooms. It's basically saying that information can be organised in one of these 4 ways. So the columns that you're seeing coming down here, they are all pointing towards a certain type of processing. So if you think about this one, compare. We always ask people to compare different things. How are apples similar to oranges? How are certain leaders similar? What's the difference between X and Y? And those questions have a way of processing the answer. So usually it starts with, how is such and such different, or how is such and such similar? And with those sort of questions, you can use these tools to be able to process the answer effectively. And then another one here, sequence. You're basically asking the question, what happened, or what would happen? So you're asking a child to be able to sequence a series of events in order to generate meaning. And what Oliver's talking about here is that there's only effectively 4 types of questions that a child will encounter in school. And I think this is quite profound, because if there are only 4 types of questions that they're going to have, asking a child to define something, chunking, asking a child to compare something, asking a child what happened, and asking a child how the effects of something, or what is the cause of something. Effectively, pretty much all of your questions that you're going to ask, all those pieces of writing that they're going to be asked to do in school, is going to fall within one of these columns. So the argument goes that all you need to do is better teach them when and how to use these graphic organisers, and you're halfway there. So I really recommend having a look at this, and you'll find this in the folder, because if a child can understand what it is they're being asked to do, then they should be able to choose one of these accompanying graphic organisers, and then you're halfway for them to becoming an independent learner. They're not going to be having to ask you all the time, what do you want me to do with the information? So I've seen these in classrooms around the UK, being on walls, something to be, or templates that children would fill out, and they're incredibly useful to have in your back pocket when you want to start a new topic, or at the end of a topic when you want to consolidate them. I'm just going to pause it here while I jump into a new tool, and I'm going to show you a task that I've done that I would encourage you to do with learners. You'll have to adapt it to your individual circumstance, but it might prove quite useful. So this is the first tool that I wanted to share with you. This is something called Miro. Miro is a good one because it's an online platform that you can use to share ideas, and you can use it sort of staff to staff or staff to child. I won't go into the functionality of it now, but for educators, they have a free education license, which is always worth taking advantage of. So it's effectively trying to replace physical post-it note and flip chart exercises. So it's a place where you can do your thinking out loud. Now this is really important, because the task that we just looked at with the paragraph and I asked you the questions, those sorts of questions, those sorts of tasks really lend themselves to thinking outside of your head. What I mean by that is having somewhere where you can share your thinking with another person. And I think Miro is a good one for that. Now this, you'll see at the centre of my canvas here, is the Oliver Caviglioli's Organising the Organisers PDF. And within that, I've got all those different types of thinking. So chunking, comparing, sequencing, and cause and effect. Now this is a nice exercise that I like to do. And it's all about, you're not answering the questions that are around the outside. What you're doing is thinking about how you would go about answering those questions. So, for example, which global figure has done the most for the world? Describe the country you live in. Let's take this one, describe the country you live in. So this question's asking me to list different things about where I am at the moment, England. Now, it's not asking me to compare England, it's asking me to describe. So if you look at our first column, this is pretty much what we're doing, organising information or chunking information. So it might lend itself to a mind map. And now I'm going to leave this this open so you and your colleagues can fill this out. But if I type in here, mind map, and now you'll see that I think that a mind map would be quite a useful one to use here. And then you know, who are best, Real Madrid or Barcelona? Well, that changes every year. Now which one could I use for that? So this question's asking me to make a comparative judgment. So I'm looking at those questionnaires now. I'm thinking the different graphic organisers and thinking which one would be the best suited to make a comparison. I think maybe I might do a Venn diagram, and then I could compare how many leagues they've won, how many the size of their fan base, and etc. So the second column is going to help me make a comparative judgment. So I'm not going to fill this out now, but I'm going to leave this open, and you'll find the link to it in your folder. But it's just a useful exercise to do if you want to get children involved in making decisions about learning and help them demystify the learning process. I think that graphic organisers are one of those tools that you can use and keep using, and children get better at using over the course of your career. Now, I wanted to have a look at some of the graphic organisers that you can use again and again, and the research shows us that using graphic organisers by and large is a metacognitive activity. That is, that you're showing children how to organise information, which is an incredibly powerful idea. And within your folder, which accompanies this series on cognition, I've put some graphic organisers in there that I've designed. And they're adaptations of ones that you would have seen 1,000 times in your own school time and at university. So this one here is a Diamond 9. And what I'm doing with this is I'm trying to guide children's thinking with this. So as well as using the Diamond 9 to rank a particular topic by an agreed value. So let's say I'm ranking global warming causes by significance, and you can see I could quickly start populating this Diamond 9, car exhaust fumes, air travel, etc. But what I've added to this one, and you're free to adapt it and do what you want with it, is add 2 extra boxes at the bottom asking children to make a judgment, and that would be where you could ask them a question, which of these effects is the most important, which one can we do most about, or ask them to look at it from a new perspective, from a farming perspective, which one of these could we not eradicate. And it just helps you to design the thinking of the child, which is kind of parcel of teaching. You're trying to show them a new perspective and change the way they think about a particular topic. And likewise, you'll find in your folder some timelines as well. So just to look at when to use visuals in the classroom and for what purposes, I'm actually going to present this using a visual tool called Whimsical. Again, Whimsical, you'll find all the details in your folder. And I've chosen Whimsical because it's incredibly simple to use, easy to adapt. Again, for teachers, this is one of those ones where you're working with very generous developers who've agreed to give this away for free for anyone working in the field of education. So it's a good one to sign up to. So in terms of when you should use visuals and graphic organisers, they're a really good assessment for learning tool or formative assessment tool. So you can find out what a student knows very quickly by asking them to fill one of these out. And again, using the right sort of graphic organiser, as we looked at with Oliver Caviglioli's work, with the right type of task. They're very good for sort of being able to use. I mean, for paper-based ones, that you can adapt them and you can rethink as well. Because the problem with writing is that when you're writing in syntactic form, you're putting down your ideas in a sort of a serial way, and you can't go and adapt that unless you're working on a word processor. So what we find is when you're using graphic organisers, you can quickly map out everything that's in your head and use that as a platform to go on to then do your writing. In terms of sort of consolidating knowledge, they're quite a useful tool to use at the end of a topic. So put everything together into a graphic organiser. In terms of the drawbacks of using sort of some of the online ones, I think potentially they're easier to use than the paper-based one because they're increased functionality, and you can use colour very quickly, and you'll find that very young children are very quick at being able to pick up the functionality. And what we don't want is children to be thinking about, how to change the colour, how to put an arrow in. You want them to be thinking about the content of the lesson as opposed to how to download and upload things within the program itself. The only thing I'd be conscious of is having more screen time if you're going to use these tools online. So I've just put a couple down here which will help you sort of understand how you can use them. So this simple one here is a hierarchical idea, and this is going to help me in this case to categorize different types of food. So here I've got my food that I haven't processed yet. So I'm going to put this. I can start to think about what sort of a food is this? Sprouts, and very quickly I can start drawing with these connectors down to sprouts, and then I can add certain text, and you can see very quickly I can start categorizing those, and I can do some clever things with them where I might want to fish. These are obviously fish, so salmon and trout are fish, so let's actually put those in their own category, and then I can start to connect up. So I can sort of think very quickly using these sort of tools, and then I can save them as a PDF, and they look nice as well. What about doing processes? Well, they're probably best for mapping out processes. So you think of timelines, or if you're creating plans for a particular topic, anything where you need to map out all the individual steps that you're going to do in order to achieve something. So this one here, a fictional one, I'm cycling along on my bike and I've had a puncture, so I can very quickly think about, well, first of all, let's take your tyre off, and then replace in a tube if it's, I might be able to repair it. So maybe there's a decision there, and then I can join those two up from there, and then again I can draw this one down to there, and then put tyre back on bike, pump up tyre, cycle off into the sunset. There you go. So very quickly you can get your ideas out, and I pre-prepared that one. And then here our old favourite, the Venn diagram. So I've created a Venn diagram in here, and then you can use it very quickly for being able to categorise or make comparisons between things. So again, you think back to the organising the organisers. Very quickly you can start to map out these ideas in here. I think that one's right. And then one of the things I wanted to share with you was concept maps, and this is what Joseph Novak talks about in the video that you'll find in your folder. Concept maps on their surface look quite simple, but they're incredibly powerful, because what they do is they explain the relationship between the different parts of a topic or a body of knowledge. So here, this is seemingly random words related to football, and I haven't explained how they're connected at all. And what you can do is you can use the connections to explain what the relationship is. So, for example, here, let's have a quick look at this. the coach is in charge of players. So let's just move some of this out of the way. And as you'll see, it's going to change as I start building this out. So I'm going to draw a line from these two to there. And now I don't just want a line. I want to explain what that is. So I could use a verb here. So the coach trains the players. And then I could put here, maybe, what's the relationship between the owner and the coach? Well, the owner, let's just draw a line down from there to there. The owner pays the coach. And you can see, you can start building up these and explain something that's maybe quite new, quite novel. You can explain the connections, and very quickly you're first and foremost building up understanding, but then you're also helping children to be in a position to articulate their ideas. So hopefully that's given you a good grounding of why visuals are important for the learning process. They're not just nice to have, something that looks nice to stick in your book. They're a fundamental tool for the learning process. They're about, they're improving the way that a child computes incoming information, if you want to think about a kind of a computer analogy. And in the next session, what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at how language affects thought. And I would encourage you to come back to this one and think about, well, how do visuals affect language, and how does language affect visuals? And what you'll start to notice is how all these things are joined up. So they're not separate entities in themselves. They're all fundamentally connected. And just, I love to finish on a sort of a computing game metaphor. But to sum up, learning is a bit like Tetris. That what you're trying to do in the classroom is help children make conceptual connections. And for most of us, we're not just going to go around gobbling up new information. That's kind of quite rare to come across a child who can just devour information. So I encourage you to be able to show children how to process information and how to make those important conceptual connections.